Welcome to Spotlight ETSU. I'm your host, Carrie Oliveira. Today we're here with Pat Cronin, who is the head of the Division of Theater and Dance in the Department of Communication. He is also a widely famous professional actor who's been in films, TV, and theater. Today we're going to talk to him about what his activities are on campus, his recent trip to Ireland for sabbatical, and what else is coming down the pike for him. Welcome, Pat. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Carrie.
How are you?
I love your theme music.
It's super peppy, right?
I think we should have jazzed hands our way in.
We can still.
We can still.
So, how did you come to ETSU?
Very interesting. I was in Los Angeles. I moved to Los Angeles in 1976.
From where?
Philadelphia.
That's a long travel.
Yeah, well, I'd been in New York off and on for a couple of years, sort of commuting from Philly. Then I lived for a couple of years in New York. And, you know, the industry is still a two-city industry. I mean, it's spread out and it's a little more diversified, but essentially, if you're going to make it as an actor or as anything in the business, you're going to make it in Los Angeles or New York.
Right.
And they're different animals, you know. They're just totally different animals. And I never quite liked, New York never quite worked for me.
Really?
No.
That sort of surprises me.
I wasn't a New York person.
Isn't all the East Coast sort of culturally similar? I mean, if you were from Philly originally?
No, everybody from Philly hates New York.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, because, well, they feel inferior. There they are, a city of 6 million. 90 miles from a city of 20 million.
You know, you stack up a little short, I guess.
Yeah, so you don't feel so good. So anyway, I did a lot of dinner theater and I did a lot of off Broadway and a lot of touring stuff, but I couldn't get a Broadway show, which was really the mecca, and so it didn't seem to happen. So anyway, I went to Los Angeles and that worked. I mean, within inside of 6 months, I was working a lot.
How was it that New York or California decided that you were hireable, but New York hadn't?
I've seen a lot of actors. I met an actor, Keith Langsdale, in LA. We were doing a McDonald's commercial, and I took one. He was born and raised in California. I took one look at him, and I said, "You're a New York actor," because he couldn't get a rep.
Just call it.
I looked at him. I said, "You're a New York actor. They don't know what to do with you here." He looked lantern jaw. He looked very Princeton. You know, he looked like Princeton. So LA doesn't know what to do with Princetonian. So I said, I'm going back to New York this summer, because once I hit in LA, it fed New York.
Right.
So all of a sudden,
you had credibility all of a sudden.
I had credibility. So, so I went to New York. I was bi-coastal for 10 years. Go to New York for 5 or 6 months in commercial season and do very well. So I took this guy with me. I said, my wife and I are going back to New York. Why don't you come with us? And I introduced him to my agent. Inside of 6 weeks, he was starring on One Life to Live.
You're kidding.
And did that for 5 years. Yeah, I looked at him, I said, New York, and there is a look.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I was a California actor. I find that strange.
I do too, because I would definitely have not classified you as Californian, but it works for you.
It works for me. And again, everybody faces their own path. What happened to me was I taught at Temple University. There are only actually 3 careers I've ever considered. Okay. The priesthood was my first call.
Shut up.
16 years of Catholic school.
It gets in your mind after a while.
What can I tell you?
Yeah.
And so I considered that. And the other thing I considered was teaching. I loved learning and I loved being in school. And I did. I started as a teacher and I taught at Temple University for 5 years.
And you were teaching acting?
I taught acting, intro to theater, low man on the totem, but lecturer, as they say in the indentured servitude business.
Indeed.
And but I enjoyed it. I was young. I was 25, and taught from 25 to 30. And then I had a sort of an epiphany. I thought, I don't like this.
Oh.
This isn't what I want to do. So I walked into my boss's office, Paul Hostetler, Lord rest him. He was a mentor, and I walked in. I said, Paul, I quit.
Just like that?
Just like that. And he said, are you nuts? He said, we have 500 Harvard PhDs who want your job. I said, well,
they can give it to him.
You'll have to pick one.
I'm walking out.
I'm out. So I left, and I went from making, in those days, what was a normal salary? I was making $7,500 a year as a lecturer, to making $2,200 as an actor, and I stayed at the $2,200 mark for 3 years. But then things started to happen in Philly, and I became like a really big fish in a small pond. I was doing lots of good work and getting paid. I was doing a lot of local commercials and industrials and doing what an actor does in a small market to make a living. And I can remember the day I was either doing The Adding Machine or Long Day's Journey, I forget which, but a good role. And I was at a restaurant in Philly, one of the 3 good ones. And this guy came up to me and he said, "I saw you last night in the play." He said, "You were great." I said, "Thank you." He said, "You were better than Richard Burton." I thought, well, that's nonsense. Now, why are we talking nonsense? So I thought, I know why we're talking nonsense.
Why are we talking nonsense?
Well, he's a Philadelphia lawyer.
Okay.
And he had to believe that being in Philadelphia, he was just as good as the New York people. And in order for him to be as good as the New York people, I had to be better than Richard Burton.
Right. I can see how the transitive property of logic there makes that make sense.
So I thought, this is idiotic. So that was the day I decided. I said, I've got to see if I can play with the big dogs.
Okay.
And so the big dogs are in New York or LA.
And so off you went.
So I went off to LA, and it worked. I never, obviously became a star, but I became something more difficult, a working actor.
Right.
I made a very good living for 30 years. And then I was married to an actor, Beatrice Colin, who was Marcia the Car Hop on Happy Days and who was on Wonder Woman as Wonder Woman's sidekick. And we had a great life. We had 2 wonderful children, both of whom are ETSU grads. And it was great. Everything was great. And then at age 47, she's diagnosed with lung cancer and given 3 months to live. Not so great.
Not so great.
Not so great. So, your world changes.
Yeah.
We had, our sons were 12 and 11. And I can remember walking into their bedroom because we didn't want to lie to them. And we said, your mom's not going to be here for your graduation. And we meant middle school.
Right.
And actually, she actually lived almost 5 years. But, it was a constant struggle. When she died, I remember, I figured out in 5 years, we were in a doctor's office or a hospital or a lab 3 times a week for 5 years. And anyway, the struggle went on, blah, blah, blah. I had a very dear friend. My best friend was Charles Roberts.
Yes.
We went
our former chair here.
Former chair. And Charles and I went to grad school together. I used to call him Charlie when I first got here.
Yeah, and you learn quickly that that's not what his preference was.
He finally said to me, dear friend, he finally said, "Oh, Pat, even my mother doesn't call me Charlie."
Less than that.
So, but I knew him as Charlie, and so anyway, I called him Charles out. But anyway, Charles and I, we have the same birthday.
I did not realize that.
So that's how we sort of stayed in touch over the years. And when he was chair of the department at McNeese State, he invited me in to guest lecture. And I actually went there for a semester and guest lectured and taught for a semester. So we remained in touch. So he knew about my situation and my wife's dying and everything. And he knew things were pretty rough. And so he said, how about a break? You need a break.
You need something else to do.
He said, we've got this gig here at ETSU. Gig seems wrong. We have this endowed chair.
That does sound way classier than gig. Yes.
Gig. So,
such an actor thing to say.
It is an actor thing. So the Baszler Chair of Academic Excellence, which had been put together by Jack Higgs.
Which for our viewing audience is a really prestigious honor to be given on this campus.
Yes.
You know,
well, there's only, I forget, I looked it up once, there's only, 100 and some endowed chairs anywhere.
Right.
So to get an endowed chair
is
position,
a big deal, period.
Yeah, it's a big deal, especially for an actor.
Right.
Where they're burying us at night, So anyway, Charles said, I can't give you this, but I'd love for you to apply.
Yeah.
So I applied, and I got it. So I came here. My wife was still living, so I explained to everyone that I had to commute.
Yep.
So I came on Tuesday and would leave on like Thursday,
yeah.
and then commute, not every week, but pretty much every week. And it was a great experience. I loved it here. It was strange because I left Philadelphia partially because it was too small.
Right, and Johnson City is by no means big.
No.
Pretty teeny. teenier than Philadelphia.
I remember my first day here. It was January 8th. I left Beverly Hills, where I lived, and it was 80. And I flew in, and that was before the new airport. So there was this old airport, and I looked down out of the window of the prop plane.
I love those.
Aren't they great? And I looked at the window, I said, a Greyhound bus terminal.
Yay!
Why are we making
This is where I've landed.
So we land, and I come off, and there's this nice gentleman in overalls and a plaid shirt. And he said, you that actor fella?
That would be me, yes.
And I said, yes, I am. And he said, I'm here to take you to the university. I said, thank you. We get out, and there's a red Ford pickup truck.
Totally suits you.
We're not in Beverly Hills anymore.
Surely not.
No Lexi.
Welcome to Appalachia.
No Mercedes. And so I get in the truck, and he says, so what church do you go to?
That was the first question he asked you after, are you that actor fella?
Yeah, or what church do you go to? So anyway, I came here, and as I say, I was the first in my family to finish high school. Actually, first in my family to finish 8th grade, if the truth be known. And so I met a lot of people here who reminded me of me, because many of them were the first in their families to go to college. And that's a really hard road.
Yeah, I can
It's
imagine.
a really hard road. And I feel very connected to the students here for that reason.
Yes.
Because, their parents want them to get an education, want them to advance, but at the same time, they feel like they're losing someone.
Yes.
My mother never wanted me to go to school. She said, think, boy, when I was 11 years old, she said, when you're 16, you can quit school and I'll get you a job here in the restaurant with me.
Yes.
I thought, what?
No, surely not. This is not what I want out of my life.
So
yeah.
a lot of that happens here. I'll get a wonderful student, especially in theater, and they'll have an accent, just like in Philly. I remember I had a kid in Philly. Mr. Cronin, do you think you could help me with my accent?
I'm going to have to help you with that accent.
I'm
because
going to
otherwise
do
you're
the best
never going to
I can.
work.
But the funny thing was, I actually did, we deal in what is called accent management.
Oh.
I don't think there's a bad accent or a good accent.
No, but there are distinct ones.
You mark yourself.
Indeed.
So, if I go into the Horseshoe Lounge, which is good cheeseburger here, I'm not going to walk in and say, good evening, my dear woman, a sweet tea and a cheese. Hello.
No.
Not the culture.
Not the culture
so
at all.
You blend into your culture. But if you don't have control over it, so this Philly guy, I'm working with him, and we get rid of some of the nasality and things. And I said, George, and I forget his name, George, see, listen to your sound, how wonderful it is. And he said, yeah, but Mr. Cronin, if I talked like that so funny, they'd make fun of me in the bar.
That is true. But you know what? We code switch. We go back and forth,
But
right?
that's what I was trying to explain. So here we deal a lot, when you're with your grandparents and your parents, you speak as you want to speak.
Yes.
When you're at a meeting at Paramount,
You speak as they want you to speak.
then you pick up a different kind of speech. And I think having gone through that cultural wrenching thing,
Yes.
I think I'm very helpful for a lot of students with that.
So I've heard.
So yeah, I really do I've learned to love teaching, which is sort of fun. That's the compartmentalizing we talked about.
We were talking about earlier before we started
So
filming.
anyway, I come here, I do the Baszler chair, I commute, I go home. I ended in May. My wife died in November. The university asked me to do the commencement address that year. And I said yes, and I came back and I did the commencement address for the December graduation in '99. And just sort of, thought, why am I not here?
Right.
Went back to LA, because my career was still there.
Yeah.
But, now my wife is dead and we were both actors, so we were together all the time. So I'd go to auditions and there would be my wife's competition.
Yes.
And I'd walk in and they'd start crying and then I'd start crying. And I thought, this is ridiculous.
I can't do this. I can't work like this.
So Dr. Stanton kept emailing me and saying, we'd love to have you come back. And in my drinking days, that wouldn't have happened.
No.
They used to say about, we have to take Pat Cronin to a place twice, the second time to apologize.
Because otherwise, yes. And then have a recollection perhaps of it.
So he invited me to come back. I came back, and the rest, as they say, is history.
And so you've been at ETSU now officially on the faculty for how long?
Well, I came back in 2000, and I said, let me put my toe in, because I wanted to make sure this wasn't just a honeymoon phase.
Yes.
So I just taught a class or two and directed a play. Meanwhile, my son had started here.
Yeah.
And so that was working out well. He, loved it.
Yeah.
And he was in the honors college.
Yes.
And that was heaven. And so after a year of testing the waters, they offered me a contract, and I said yes. And so I've been on a tenure track or administrative job since 2001. So 12 years officially,
now.
Yes.
And so you've been teaching, and at one point you had an administrative position in the Honors College, and you do a lot of directing on the campus of our shows.
Yes, I'm currently directing Other Desert Cities.
Tell me about this play, please.
John Robin Bates, who was the executive producer, head writer for Brothers and Sisters, and is famous Broadway playwright. He wrote, I saw his first play, South African. His first play was Film Society, about a group of film buffs in South Africa whose love of culture comes up against apartheid.
Yes.
Brilliant, brilliant play. Limited now for an American audience, I think. But I kept my eye, said, this guy can write. So Fade Out a couple of years ago, he did Other Desert Cities off Broadway with my old friend Linda Lavin, whom I worked with in Alice.
Right.
And so I saw it in New York, and I thought, wow, what a great script. And so it became available for amateur rights this year, and so it's the third most popular play at the moment.
It is the third most popular play at the moment. What is it about?
Well, Other Desert Cities. This is a retired couple, Polly and Lyman Wyeth, who were Republican.
Those are probably the worst names I've ever heard
terrible?
in my entire life.
Very waspy, Palm Spring.
Very waspy Palm Spring.
And so they're sort of like the old Michael J. Fox show, except reverse. Very conservative Republican parents,
right,
who cliche turn out three very liberal children. So on one level, it's the conflict between generations, but it's a lot subtler than that, fortunately. And the play has surprisingly, very few plays you go to anymore where you care about the plot.
Yeah.
You go because you want to see character development. I mean, we know how Hamlet's going to end badly.
Badly for everyone.
I just keep hoping. Put
maybe
down that sword.
You could direct it that way.
You could. The 19th century did. In Nicholas Nickleby, the Dickens novel, he has this great scene where an acting company is doing Romeo and Juliet, and at the end everybody's dead, of course, and then they all of a sudden get up and do a dance.
See, I like that ending better.
Isn't that wonderful?
Except for the musical part at the end,
right.
But whatever.
So anyway, in this play, and I won't give away the ending, spoiler alert, of course, things are not what they seem exactly. And there is a reveal at the end.
So the plot is interesting in this one.
As my colleague Melissa Schaefer said, this is the first play we've done that I felt was a page turner.
Ah, that's exciting. You're in the process of
doing it.
We're working on it now, and it's supposed to be on stage like in 2 weeks.
Yes, we open on the 17th in the Bud Frank basement of Gilbreth.
Yep.
And we play the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th.
The 20th is a 2 p.m. matinee,
of course. It's a 2 p.m. Sunday matinee, and there's some adult themes and language, although I think if it were a film, it would be PG-13. I mean, depends on how many swear words you count.
Right.
But it's not Peter Pan, so I mean, people should not come expecting that. But it deals with the conflict. What I love I was thinking about it coming over here today. And we had rehearsal last night. We ran Act 1, which is where we are, sort of off book, that terrible, awkward phase in a rehearsal process. And what struck me is, like all great plays, it's not about what it seems to be about.
That's the thing about every great story, I feel like, play or song or whatever the case may be, If it's about something other than it seems.
My son James, who was in the honors college, he once said, "Dad, you're a Kurt Cobain lyric."
You're a Kurt Cobain lyric.
I miss the comfort of being sad. I thought that was rather cool.
That
actually.
is very cool and insightful and poetic. That's
so
nice.
things are not what they seem.
Indeed.
You know, a lyric is not just a lyric, it's a father.
You're right.
to
vice
a son.
versa.
Yeah. And in this play, like Long Day's Journey into Night, like Death of a Salesman, like Glass Menagerie, it's about relationships. It's about Amber and I, my wife, our boss, the chair,
Indeed.
Dr. Kinzer, we talk at length about children and parents and our narratives. I mean, my sons, for example, who lost their mother young.
Yes.
They were 17 and 16 when she died. And now I listen to them describe her to friends, you know, and in loving, you know, but all of a sudden they'll say, oh, and Mom used to bake these peach pies. I was married to that woman for 22
Don't
years.
recall ever a pie.
One pie.
One pie.
One pie.
Did she bake it from scratch or did she defrost it out of the freezer?
Mrs. Smith's. So, you know, but for whatever reasons, their narrative has to be about that.
Right. Very stereotypic mom narrative or
They
whatever
need a
else.
mom narrative.
Yeah.
They need a Betty Crocker, I miss the comfort of my mom.
Yes.
And I need her, and so I don't want to remember the mom who was acerbic and a television star.
Right?
Because
Wanna
that
remember
isn't the mom I need.
My memory doesn't need that.
I don't need that. That's there. What I need is the peach pie mom.
Yeah.
So we make up the narrative then.
Yes.
So Amber and I discuss, well, if that's the case, what are the narratives that she and I are making up about our parents?
I mean, who knows, you know?
And this is
And does it matter?
It doesn't matter. And this is the beauty of art.
Right.
Thomas Aquinas says we bring to art much memory.
Indeed.
And I think that's what I talk to my students about. I say, look, Hamlet exists, or Othello exists. It's there. Mona Lisa exists, you know. But what matters is not that it exists sui generis, that it's there. What matters is what do you bring to it?
Right.
Because neither you and I will look at the Mona Lisa, we're not going to see the same painting.
Surely. And that's true of everything. You
And
know?
that's anything, right.
Any piece of art, any human being, any conversation.
Yes.
It's all.
And that's what's so exciting.
Right. Which
You
is
know.
what's beautiful about like going to a play. You know, you direct it, as a director, you direct it from the standpoint that you see it from.
Right.
And then you invite your audience to come in and bring to it whatever they have and take from it whatever they will.
That's right.
And that must be an enormously profound experience for you to be able to create that kind of experience for an audience.
Oh, it's why I do what I do. You know, here I am, 72, and I'm thinking, I could be watching Breaking Bad.
You could be watching Breaking Bad. You couldn't anymore, seeing
No,
as it's
it's
dead,
over,
but
yes.
you know.
Literally.
Indeed.
Spoiler alert.
Right. So yeah, there's that.
So anyway, the play is about the fact that we love so fiercely the people we love. And because that love is so fierce and burns so hot, we resent it. We can't
Yes.
help but resent it.
Yeah, I
You know,
would.
the
Yes.
more I love you, the more I need you,
And the more I'm bound to you.
bound inextricably by that silver umbilical cord or
And
whatever
then-
color. Bingo.
Yes.
And there's no way that we don't end up disappointing each other.
That's an awfully cynical view, don't you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we expect so much of the people we love
That is
it's
true.
impossible for them to be there for that.
Don't we just kind of eventually come? I mean, in order to function, right? So you're talking about relationships from an actor's standpoint,
sure.
right? I talk about relationships from a relationship
yes.
standpoint, right?
Your
So-
expertise.
And so, I absolutely agree that, you know, we bring enormous expectations to our relationships. We seek relationships with particular others because we see them as being able to provide for some need
Right.
that we have. And then we pour more needs on top of them. If you can meet this one, this important need, you can meet other important needs. And so, yes, we bind each other with these enormous expectations. But at the same time, do we not just come to sort of like a quiet acceptance that this is how we function? And we're human and we're flawed.
I think it's the purpose of art I told my students yesterday in class, I think art and religion have the same function, which is to return us wandering people, Exodus, to a kind of Eden that we lost. The loss of Eden isn't just the loss of God or a spirit, it's also the loss of what it was like before the fall.
Yes.
And every religion has an Eden myth or a good
absolutely.
Eden story. So I think what happens in church or in a good experience, when it's working and you're one with your God, you feel that you've arrived.
Yeah.
And then you come out and then you have to blow your nose and you have to go to IHOP and there's crowds.
And then the normalcy of like Walmart and whatever.
And the veil falls.
Indeed.
Eugene O'Neill in Long Day's Journey says,
Yes.
for one moment you're with the truth and then the veil falls. And I always think about that in theater. I think for the moment it's lifted and then the veil falls.
Quite literally in a curtain.
Quite literally, yes,
literally.
very good. Yeah, excellent. I'm going to steal that.
As you should.
Thank you, as I should. We're all thieves of love and knowledge.
And what would be the point otherwise? It's just
Otherwise,
sharing.
yeah.
It's not thievery.
No.
It's just we give, we take, we share.
So what
That's
happens
good.
in this play, the parents are these Ronald Reagan Republicans, and they have a view of the world that's, trust but verify, as Ronnie said. They're constantly quoting Ronnie.
Right.
And I've talked to my students at great length about this. The playwright is a liberal South African, obviously.
Right.
But none of my students feel, and many of them are conservative Republicans, and I wouldn't have picked this play if I thought it was, a diatribe. I don't like political plays anyway. They're boring.
Indeed. We get too much of that in
Well,
the media,
you only convince the already convinced.
That is true.
If I do a play that's pro whatever, the people who believe that will come out going, yeah.
That was excellent art.
And the people who don't believe that are going to come out and say, I told you it was
And it's
not.
really never about the art then at that point.
No,
The commentary is
it's
about
the polemic, yes. So this is a play about who did mom love best.
Oh.
Finally. Every play is about who did mom love best. My younger son, Charlie, those were his last words to me about his mom. He said, I said, are you okay, Charlie? Because I was in many ways closer to the older son because he was the actor and he's the older, whatever. And I said, are you okay? And he said, no, I'm fine. He said, you and Jamie do all the crying for everybody. You'd love Charlie. You should interview Charlie. And he looked at me, one tear. And he said, besides, she loved me best. And so I've carried that with me. It's when I do plays, Long Day's Journey, Death of a Salesman, it's always, happy in Death of a Salesman. It's constantly going, I'm losing weight, Pop. Did you notice?
Right.
Yeah, good. Jumping rope's good, too.
Yeah, good, great for you.
Good job.
And
I'm getting married, Pop. Yeah, wonderful. He's the second son, and he can't get noticed, but it's Biff. Biff, Hercules, a young god, something like that.
Yeah.
And the sun all around,
Yeah.
And my son James did very well in school, in high school and everything. And I said one day to Charlie, I said, hey, is your brother coming home for dinner? And Charlie looked at me and said, you mean the son who lived? We were a funny family.
I can imagine. And I imagine you take all of that sort of familial complexity into everything that you directed, whatever else.
I'm looking for answers the same as everybody else.
Right. And you just have the fortune of being able to infuse the art with that.
Yeah. And so in rehearsal, I have a gorgeous cast of, we made a decision this year. 5 or 6 years ago, we had 20-some majors. Now we have 75 majors.
Yes, your program has grown enormously.
Grown enormously thanks to my extraordinary faculty and Charles and now Amber's leadership. It's really just been a wonderful experience there. And we made a decision this year that we would, only cast ETSU students, and where possible, only ETSU majors.
And I'm really excited about that. And I will say that I met you 6.5 years ago, and you are enormously one of the most interesting people I've ever met. And I would love to talk to you more, but we're now out of time.
Really?
We are. So thank you so much,
happened?
Pat Cronin, for being here with us. Pat Cronin, the head of the Division of Theater and Dance.
Plug the play.
Plug the play. Other Desert Cities. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Spotlight ETSU.